Good evening, everyone. It is February 9th, and I'd like to call the meeting of the South Brunswick Township Board of Education to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the board secretary has caused notice of this meeting, including date, time, and location, to be posted in the South Brunswick Public Library and the board office, filed with the township clerk, and communicated to the Home News Tribune and the Star Ledger. Mr. Pawlowski, may we have roll call?
Ms. Julie Ferrara.
Here.
Ms. Laura Hernandez.
Here.
Ms. Deepa Karthik. Ms. Alicia Khan.
Here.
Mr. Raja Krishna.
Yes.
Mr. Mike Mitchell.
Present.
Mr. Barry Nathanson.
Here.
Dr. Smith Raj.
Here.
Mrs. Lisa Rogers.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Ms. Karthik is returning this evening from India, so we wish her a safe trip home. May I have a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda?
Moved. Second.
Mr. Nathanson?
Mitchell.
I'm sorry, thank you. Mr. Mitchell is a motion, and second is Dr. Raj. Next order of business is the minutes. We have no minutes to report, so we will move on. And the next order of business is the report of the student rep, Ms. Riya Krishna.
Hi everyone, good evening. So here's some updates about what's going on in our high school. With February being Black History Month, Student Council is preparing a lunch event to educate our students. We're going to have trivia, spin the wheel, and other activities that are both fun as well as informative. We're also planning a lot of spirit days for this month. On the 10th, tomorrow, is Jersey Day. The 14th is Wear Red for Valentine's. The 22nd is Monochrome Day. And the 27th is Club Merch Day. The Asian Cultural Club has begun selling tickets for their annual show, Temptation. Get your tickets soon. The front of the auditorium is already sold out. The tickets for our annual Mr. SBHS show will go out tomorrow. We have 15 contestants who are super excited to participate. Everyone in need of a prom dress is encouraged to go to the Viking Closet prom dress event on February 25th. Additionally, Amnesty Club is hosting Art for Amnesty on March 3rd. Our high school Special Olympics athletes competed in their bowling competition on January 29th. We took home a lot of medals. Here are some of them. In gold, we have Hadi Aslam, Abhinay Chaluri, Andrew Judasis, Abhi Manna, Sevi Ross. In silver, we have Akshay Vinod Kumar. They bowl at the Central Jersey Sectional Tournament on Saturday, February 25th at Stratmore Lanes for a chance to move to the New Jersey Special Olympics Games in April. Now moving on to athletics. Girls swimming earned second place overall at GMC Championships, which is our first time coming in top 3 since the 2012 to 2013 season. They earned the 4 seed in state tournament and will face Rancocas Valley in the second round of the state tournament on Wednesday, February 8th. Boys swimming won their first round of the state tournament on Tuesday, February 7th against Freehold Township, and they're moving on to their second round at West Windsor Plainsboro South. The dance team competed at the Hillsborough Invitational on January 22nd and brought home 4th place in jazz, 2nd in pom, and 1st place in both team performance and game day. The team also hosted Best of the Best here at South Brunswick High School, where many of the state's best dance teams came to perform. It was a very successful event, attended by many members of our South Brunswick community. They also competed at Passaic Valley Regional Sweetheart Invitational January, where they brought home 3rd in game day, pom, and jazz, and 4th in team performance. Finally, the dance team competed at the National Dance Alliance Regionals on February 5th, bringing home 3rd place in pom and team performance, 2nd place in game day, and 1st place in the jazz category. This is the 2022 to 2023 team's 4th regional title for the season. The team is now in their final preparation for the NDA National Championship on March 3rd to 5th. The cheer team is competing at the Cheers National at the ESPN Worldwide Center of Sports in Florida. Our upcoming home events is on the 10th, we have wrestling versus Heightstown. On the 11th, we have wrestling quad versus Edison, Manville and North Nottingham, and girls varsity basketball to place East Brunswick in the GMC quarterfinals at Middlesex County College. On the 12th, we have boys varsity basketball in the GMC quarterfinals at Middlesex County College. 1 p.m. is the start, and they're pending a win versus JPS today on February 9th. Thank you. That's all I have today.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Krishna? Seeing none, we will move on. Thank you very much. Our next order is the report of the superintendent, Mr. Federer.
Thank you very much.
You got it.
Welcome, everyone, and congratulations to our VFW SAE contest winners that we'll be seeing shortly. A few reminders to start off. We have kindergarten registration for next year. It's opening up on March 1st. If you know kindergarten families, please get them in. The more we know, the earlier, the better we can do staffing for that. You also have the calendar on there today, but we are currently working on the next calendar. Well, we're working on the 23-24 calendar. You'll have that on the next one. You don't have anything on today. But we're also working on the following year. And I will tell you, the following year is not looking so pretty. It's got some long year right now. That one looks like it's ending after this 25th of June so far. That is a result of, we have a very comprehensive calendar that is very inclusive of pretty much everything under the sun. So all kinds of holidays and recognitions for lots of things, and that pushes the calendar out. This year, we believe the calendar is going to end probably around the 20th. We're working on a few things, but that's good for next school year. But we'll have that on your plates shortly, and we might be giving you 2 years to look at this time around. But we are looking at a June 20th end date. That would be when graduation would be for this school year. So for people that are looking at graduation, Mr. Burrell, that's the date you're using so far, June 20th, correct? Sure. And we were able to get, yes, so we were able to get the Sun again, Sunbank, for next year. Right? So for the next school year, we're able to get back to Sunbank Arena. This year, you know, we're going to Rutgers. And the big difference, of course, was finances. Rutgers was substantially more, but that's when the availability of the time that we usually use are, so we went with that for this year. But next year, Mr. Burrell was able to get that back for that. Another announcement, elementary semester 1 report cards. Those are posted, so parents can go on to Genesis and check that out. And the topic that would not be a meeting if I don't talk about preschool. So a few notices on preschool real quick. Number 1, we held our lottery. And we had about 30 slots. And we had about 650 people wanting the 30 slots. So we held the lottery. It was recorded. Lisa was as well on the recording, so all done on the up and up. And those families will be notified, and those children will be starting as soon as this month. We also, in April, plan on opening 2 more classes. So that will be, we already have the lottery done, so we'll just go down the order and identify people and put them in the classes. Again, that will only be for April, May, and June. And then one of the questions we get asked, well, if my child's a 3-year-old and they're in the program this year, will they be automatically enrolled next year? The answer is yes. So we're not going to put a kid in for 3 years old, then remove them for 4-year-old. So that's all happening. Next year's lottery has not occurred yet. So there'll be more information coming about that. And the other big date is on March 1st. We will be hosting a webinar for third-party potential providers. That means if there are other preschools in the town that are interested in hearing about how they could partner with us, they're going to want to attend that meeting. Now, we've identified all of the South Brunswick residential preschools, and we'll be sending them notification and an invite to this webinar. And there'll be a question and answer session for the webinar, but basically we want to give people that have reached out to us, as well as other partners, an opportunity to understand what it would mean to be a partner to the district in preschool. So the only way we're going to grow past about 20 classes is with partners. This year, just so the board is clear, we currently are operating 10 integrated preschools. We'll be opening 2 more in April. And then next year, we plan to open 7 more above that. That's the expectation. Remember, our numbers are directly correlated to how much money the state is giving to us. This year, they gave us a little under 2.1 million. If they're going to fund the full 250 regular education students next year, that would be somewhere between 3.6 and probably 4 million would be what we receive from the state just for the preschool. And all that money is spent solely on the preschool, and that's how that works. So we'll keep updating you and giving you information, but March 1st is the next big date, and this month, the lottery children will be able to get started in their preschools, and parents will hear more about that soon, now or soon. More quick information, that's it for preschool. Friday, February 17th, we send out notification on this to our elementary families. Elementary schools only on Friday the 17th will be an early release day. Only elementary. And then, since we have, always nice to announce this when we have students in the audience, that weekend after that, 17th, 18th, 19th, we're off the 20th, and that is also a homework-free weekend. So no homework, no assignments or long-term projects will be due or test given before February 23rd. And that concludes my nice short report today.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Fetter. Any questions for Mr. Fetter? No? Just a quick point on the pre-K registration process. I just want to say that it was extremely organized and well-run, and kudos to Mr. Fetter, Mr. Morales, and Ms. Suzanne LeBourne, as well as their assistants. They did a really fantastic job.
And Megan Plummer.
And Megan, I'm sorry, that's the second time I forgot Megan. Okay, no questions, we will be moving on. Our next order of business is the recognition by the VFW 9111 for their essay contest winners and the South Brunswick Teacher of the Year. Is there a presenter? No one here to present? Aha, there we go. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jack Medina. I'm the Interim Supervisor of Social Studies and Language Arts. And today I'm here to celebrate our kids. So every year there is a Veterans of Foreign Affairs essay contest at the middle school and the high school level. The middle school level is called Patriots Pen. There is some Patriot theme each year, and this year was My Pledge to Veterans. So we had a number of kids that competed at both middle schools, and 3 advanced to the district level. So we're here to celebrate these 3 today. Each one is going to come up to read his or their essay. And I'm also going to announce the language arts teacher for those students. So the first one is Liliana Felder. Liliana cannot be here today. Her teacher is Mrs. Leslie Bach. The second student, and Mrs. Rogers, if you mind, would you mind coming up to administer their certificates? So the second student is Arihant Nanda Singh. And by the way, feel free to applaud before, after the student reads the student's essay. So this is a big accomplishment. We're very proud of our kids here.
All right, good evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone here for giving me an opportunity to present my essay. I'd also like to give a thank to the VFW and my school, Crossroads South, for hosting this event. My name is Arihant Singh Nanda. I am in 7th grade from Crossroads South in the Gamma unit, and this is my essay, My Pledge to Our Veterans. How would you praise your veterans? What I would do is I would help them, because that's what they've been doing their entire lives. First, you would help the veterans with disabilities or diseases when they went to the foreign wars. Second, you would help the veterans by valuing them for what they've done and to listen to their stories so that you can honor what they've done. Lastly, you could convince your veterans by helping the homeless and the ones who have been evicted by giving them some money. This is how I can assist my veterans by doing all these things for them. Firstly, how I can help my disabled veterans by supplying them with care and doing anything they tell me to do. I'll also get medical professionals and resources to make their lives much, much more comfortable. Over 6,000 people care for and volunteer for veterans. I would also like to volunteer in VA hospitals like the DAV or the Disabled American Veterans and donate to them. Over 1 million people have been treated by the DAV as of 2021 because of mental and physical disabilities. This is how I would help my disabled and diseased veterans by donating to charities and volunteering at their homes and VA hospitals. Secondly, I can help veterans by valuing what they've done for their community. I will listen to their stories and praise what they've done. Every veteran has a story behind what they've done, and if you find it boring, be patient, as 21% of veterans are old or middle-aged. I value my parents as well because they're also veterans, and we should thank them for doing every single thing for you. This is how I would help my veterans, by listening to their stories and honoring them. Lastly, I can help veterans by giving the homeless and evicted veterans money and building them new houses so that they can stay in a sheltered place. Over 38,000 homeless veterans are on the streets as of 2022. What I would do is give them some necessities to keep themselves safe and healthy. People who have been evicted from their houses can also suffer from PTSD when have been evicted. What I can do is provide them with houses and calm them down so the PTSD wears off. This is how I can help my veterans, by giving the homeless and evicted ones necessities. This is how I can honor my veterans, by donating to charities and volunteering at their hospitals and volunteering at their homes and VA hospitals for the disabled and diseased, by listening to their stories and honoring them, and by giving the homeless and evicted ones necessities. By doing these things, I can honor my veterans for what they've done. Thank you.
So Arhant's language arts teacher is Miss Rebecca Delcourt. Our third student who also reached the district level is from Crossroads North, and that is Maltiti Hamza. Maltiti's language arts teacher is Mr. Michael Moruski, who is in the audience today.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Maltiti Hamza. I'd like to thank my school and my family and everyone here so that I can present my speech. All veterans deserve to be honored for their bravery. Veterans who fought in conflicts like the Vietnam War, the Korean War, and most recently the Iraq War had to spend months at a time separated from their loved ones, as well as in extremely dangerous battle zones. Some of these individuals have suffered from severe injuries or fallen to insanity from emotional suffering and mental pain. They are now condemned to relieve themselves of their memories of the tragic events they have faced. We as a country have to realize that our veterans indeed should and shall be honored. Veterans who knowingly put themselves through such horrible events just to safeguard our liberty should, in my opinion, be recognized as heroes by everyone. Most Americans typically view Veterans Day as just another holiday, but it's actually much more than that. Instead of taking the day off to lay back and unwind, we should commemorate the soldiers who work tirelessly day in and day out to defend our freedoms and liberties. It takes very little to honor and remember our veterans. There are various ways we can show our appreciation for them. Whether you display a flag in your front yard or put your hand on your heart while the pledge of the Star-Spangled Banner is being recited, your kind words or deeds can comfort and console our dear veterans. In conclusion, we must give all the praise to our American soldiers. They conduct their daily activities with the goal of defending our nation. The United States is extraordinarily fortunate to have such selfless heroes who could choose to defend us. They run the risk of dying, suffering from serious wounds, or mental illness, or both. They don't do it for fame, but rather for our freedom. Therefore, the least we can do as a country is treat them with the utmost respect. Thank you.
All right, so excellent job, and we really appreciate the way in which you honored our veterans. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague at the high school, Mrs. Teresa Jennings.
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Fetter, Dr. Mammon, Ms. Luckborn, the VFW representative, Mr. Kloberg, who couldn't be here tonight, community members, teachers, parents, and our featured students. Tonight, we are here to honor South Brunswick High School's winners of the VFW's Voice of Democracy Essay Contest. Since 1947, the Voice of Democracy has been the Veteran of Foreign Wars premier scholarship program. Each year, almost 40,000 high school students compete for more than $2 million in scholarships and incentives. Students compete by writing and recording an audio essay on an annual patriotic theme. This essay season, we have the honor of announcing two winners. Our winners, Riley Green and Rohan Sinha, both students in Miss Carlisi's Honors American Government class. She's with us here tonight. Have been winners, and I'd like to say on many occasions from Miss Carlisi's class, and she's saying that those two winners are going to be in her class in a couple of years, so she's expecting to see you there. As in the past, we've had over 75 essays submitted from various social studies classes. I would like to thank Riley and Rohan for taking the time to compose their essays to answer this year's questions, why is the veteran important? And I would also like to thank their parents and teacher for encouraging these students to share their opinions. It is my pleasure to introduce Riley as she recites her essay.
Hi everyone, I would like to thank the VFW as well as my teacher for this opportunity and everyone here today. To be free, one must not fear. The statement seems comprehensible. Being fearless and carefree grants freedom, right? However, the first time I heard this phrase, followed by the mentions of regulation, defense, control, the clear understanding I once had dissipated into thin air. The words followed me out the daunting doors of school and back in the next day, until finally I came to a conclusion. Our nation has held the reigning title Land of the Free for centuries. Nevertheless, we would not have kept this reputation without the rigorous effort of our troops, who have truly supported the abolishment of fear and therefore the bestowment of freedom. For they are the harnesses that give us, the rock climbers, the courage to tackle the highest of mountains, persevere against the jagged terrain that is life itself, knowing that if we fall, we have been provided the basic safeties to try again. The veteran, a tree held by roots of security and protection, followed by branches of opportunity and possibility, budding with righteousness, sacrifice, and respect, often chopped down by our society today, as many have become ignorant of the importance of our veterans as they defended our nation, given us the possibility to improve our government, and emulated values of true bravery and compassion. For the majority of my lifetime, over 775,000 U.S. service members have fought in Afghanistan in hopes to protect the country as well as the U.S. from terrorists, each risking their lives to ensure that we could all be here today. However, this instance is only a page in the never-ending novel of when the military has protected our country from catastrophic consequences. Though it may not always feel like such, life is a gift that can easily be stolen. Common defense, primarily granted through our military, is a necessary part of the survival. Hence, honoring our veterans is essential when compensating for the plethora of security they have provided our nation. Diving even deeper into the quality of life, it is often argued how well the government protects the people. However, in relevance to the veterans, it is seen that no improvement in our government would ever have been made possible without the security to do so. Every person could find at minimum one thing they enjoy about living here. The real question is, how are these rights maintained? Would it be upheld if we were overtaken by a dictator, controlled by the beliefs of a hate group? The likely answer is no. We are lucky enough to have veterans who have spent their years in service preventing tragedies like these. That way, the rest of our nation can focus on making our government the best it can be. Most importantly is who a veteran is. There seems to be some certain characteristics that contribute to the title veteran. My grandpa, a veteran in the Vietnam War, was known by everyone in his town as a friendly, brave, and selfish person. During his struggles with cancer, he still insisted on continuing to volunteer at the local firehouse he had helped out at for over 50 years. Then a little over a year ago, when his passing came, these same firefighters organized a procession to show their appreciation for his commitment. Seeing all these people talk about the impact my grandfather had on them really gave me the clarification on the kind of person he was, a beacon of light on what could have easily been the worst day of my life. However, these wholesome traits don't just apply to him. My great-grandfather was awarded a Bronze Star for his service in World War II, saving his outfit from an enemy patrol of 8 and disarming and wounding them before the entirety of his unit awoke. Daniel Crowley was captured by Japan and suffered through 11 days of torture on a ship, followed by years of being forced to work in some of Japan's most dangerous mines. These inspiring figures, along with many more, have shown what a veteran truly means. If the people fighting are not devoted to their cause, our military would collapse. Courage, selflessness, and compassion are all needed in our service members to thrive the way we have. Seeing the power of our military and how it has protected us in these times highlights the fact that veterans have admirably showcased these values for decades. I like to relate back to my initial imagery of veterans being trees and harnesses, us, the rock climbers. I hope that these trees, reflecting the many honorable aspects of veterans, blossom, forever staying in the back of your minds. I ask that the next time you finish your latest trek up the mountain, you look down and see what could have gone wrong, just for a moment. Recognize that without a harness, the selfless contributions of our veterans, you would still be climbing, fearing the fall. I cannot express the immense gratitude I feel towards the veterans of our nation. For those listening to this who have served in our military, I thank you. Thank you for granting me the chance to reach for the stars. Thank you for protecting our nation and bearing the safety of many on your backs. And most of all, thank you for obliterating the fear so that our nation could become and stay the home of the brave, the land of the free. Thank you.
Congratulations.
And now, our next winner, Rohan. Congratulations. Nice job.
Firstly, I would like to thank the South Brunswick Board of Education for granting me this amazing opportunity to express my immense gratitude towards the American veteran. Unaware of the rights and freedoms I had, a few years ago I was born on American soil. It was only after a particular event that I realized how blessed I am to have all these rights that billions across the country and world did not have. I realized the impoverishment that many are forced to go through. I realized the pain and responsibilities that some had at my age. I realized who had given me this wonderful life: soldiers. June 2017. At the peak of the torrid summer of Missouri, the day had arrived. The annual Father's Day convention. I had always looked forward to this day every year because I got to bring my father to school and talk about him and his job. I enjoyed it quite much. After arriving, we took our seats and waited to be called upon by the class teacher. As the teacher continued to read through the list of students, they came along and spoke about their father for a few minutes. This went along for around an hour until the teacher called upon a specific student who didn't have anyone with him. He at first hesitated to come on stage. However, after some assistance, he did. He said in a slow and sad voice, "My father was a Marine. Unfortunately, he's not here with us today." I noticed a tiny teardrop fall across his cheek. After saying this, he abruptly went back to his seat and anxiously waited for the event to end. Me and my father got our chance a few minutes later, but I couldn't get my mind off my classmate. He and his father were all I could think about for the next few weeks. I realized the true responsibility of a soldier, and it was a lot more than I thought. Along with managing their own personal lives and supporting their family, they were tasked to protect people all across the country, and this quite blew my mind. It was after this understanding that I gained a true sense of respect for the people who have enlisted themselves in the Army. I had learned about many wars at school, but nothing had gotten to me like the sorrows of this child. I started to think about how everyone's lives are dependent on those who protect the country. They're sometimes overlooked, but they are the true backbone of society. People are often more interested in the actions of the president or other high-ranking government officials, but they overlook the sacrifices that soldiers have made in our society. Some countries are still stuck in warlike situations for decades because of weak militaries, which prevent children from going to schools and having comfortable lifestyles. I realized how blessed I was for having all these resources and that I should never neglect them. It is because of the brave souls who have lifted this country to the point that all people can now enjoy their freedom to happiness. A few weeks later, I decided that I was going to host a fundraiser at my community to raise funds for former or present enlistees in the American Army. After long consideration, I had chosen the charities I was going to donate to and also how I was going to raise the money. I set out a table in front of my local library and raised funds all over summer. After 3 long scorching weeks of summer, I had finally raised enough money to at least try to make a difference in the lives of at least one soldier. Regardless of the time and effort it took, I had done the right thing. Our soldiers are the reason why I can sleep peacefully at night, and spending a few weeks is nothing compared to what they've done for me. The death of my classmate's father opened my eyes to the reality of life. It has made me grateful for everything I have. Some children are left parentless because of wars that take place in their country. And these soldiers are ready to sacrifice everything they have in order to provide for the people of their country so they can have a prosperous and safe lifestyle, which I have an enormous amount of respect for. I too plan to enlist myself in the Marine Corps one day and serve the country the way my predecessors have. God bless America and those who protect it with their souls. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohan and Riley. Now I'll turn the presentation back over to Mr. Medina.
Rohan and Riley, very personal and very touching essays, so job well done as well. I'm here also to present the VFW Teacher of the Year Award for the middle school. So currently this contest has not ended. I'm pleased to say that our teacher has made it past the district level and is now competing at the state level. So what the VFW Teacher of the Year Award recognizes is exceptional teachers for their outstanding commitment to teaching Americanism and patriotism. They're looking for commitment to democracy, flag etiquette, and promotion of civic responsibility. It's particularly with this latter quality that we really have an amazing candidate. And she's the type of teacher who values literacy. She gets books in the hands of kids. She's had after-school clubs where kids engage in discussions about books. And when we think about democracy and civilization, like really literacy is the bedrock of that. So we are so happy to announce Mrs. Sarah Boscano as our candidate. Mrs. Boscano could not be here tonight, but we just very, very happy to have her at the middle school level working with kids and doing all that she does to support them in their literacy efforts. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the board.
Thank you so much. And to the 4 individuals that spoke, your parents should be so proud of you. It means a lot to hear about how you speak about vets. And I'm sorry, I get a little emotional. My dad lives with me, and he's a 98 years old World War II veteran. And he tells the stories all the time to me and my children. So I promise you, when I go home tomorrow, I will be showing him your 4 speeches, because it means a lot that you all, and all of you that have even submitted, should be proud of the time that you took to honor our veterans, because it truly is why we have the freedoms we have. So thank you. Okay. And now the next order of business is Mr. Fetter's exciting LEA plan for safe return and in-person instruction and continuity of service. Thank you.
So by law, every 60 days, we have to report out on our COVID numbers. Report is concluded. I have nothing to report.
There's no numbers.
But I have to say, I have nothing to report. As per state law, I have nothing to report. There's a minor, it's nothing significant. There's some people that have COVID? Yes. Will I be announcing that some people have COVID in 6 years? I'd imagine so. But there's nothing that we're doing. There's nothing. I'm concluded my report.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're very
for
welcome.
that. You're very
Now
good.
you have the opportunity for public comment
yes.
about my report.
Oh, that's right. Just specific.
Also part of the state code
Yes.
is we do this every 60 days, and now the community specific to this topic only. If you have any comments on the topic of the COVID report, you may come to the mic and speak.
Seeing we have none, we can move on.
Okey-doke.
Thank you for that exciting presentation. Our next order of business is also Mr. Fetter and Ms. Luckborn on the Start Strong assessment. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Before we begin, normally after we have a student recognition, before we move into some of our other presentations, we do give our students and their families that opportunity to go home and continue with your nightly events that you have planned. You are more than welcome to stay and listen to the presentation on these results, but we would like to give you an opportunity to step out if you would like.
Before you go, if you would like me to redo my other report, I can do that again for you. You have a good night.
I feel bad we chased them all away. And that's another tough act to follow, just the passion in the voices of our youth talking about our veterans. Such an important pause for us to remember that. So,
The last one standing. Congratulations, you signed on for the rest of the night.
it's
Awesome.
actually
Good.
nice to have our principals here with us, and I know that there may be people in the auditorium and at home following along this evening, so we are here tonight to share with you our Start Strong results from this past fall's test administration, which was in October. You've heard me talk before about all of the efforts that go into preparing and administering, so I'm going to fast forward and get right to what we have prepared for you this evening. So why do we administer Start Strong? This goes back as our country, as our state recovered from the pandemic. We wanted to use the fall of 21 and fall of 22 to gauge where our students are at, to begin to better program for that. It impacts students in grades 4 through high school age. You'll see a little bit more in upcoming slides which particular grade levels are impacted. Like I said, fall of 2022. And we'll share with you a little bit of what we do once we have this information and what we've been doing since we received the information early on this year. Okay, grade levels. Content is English Language Arts, mathematics, and science. It's aligned with our New Jersey standards, and the structure is an online assessment, much shorter than the NJSLA, which you are all familiar with, happens in the spring. This assessment's given in the fall. It's about an hour in each content area. This is just a graphic to remind you that if a student is enrolled in grade 4, the student then takes an assessment based on their 3rd grade ELA content. I think it's just important to put out there that this is the same standards that they were assessed on 4 months earlier at the end of their 3rd grade year. Again, likewise in math, a 4th grader is assessed on the 3rd grade standards at the start of the school year. When you see our Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, that's where it's a little different. So a student enrolled in Algebra 1, whether they're taking that course in our middle school or in our high school setting, that is assessing the grade 8 math content with a focus on standards related to algebraic concepts. think this graphic also helps to share with you some of the similarities between these standardized metrics and some of the differences. They both assess the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. It is the same content, and families receive score reports that provide information about how their individual student did on those measures. The differences, like I said, Start Strong assesses the prior year content, and JSLA would assess the current year content. The length of the test, the grade levels are 4 through 12 for Start Strong, 12th being they take a science component, and JSLA's grades 3 through 10, so our third graders did not take this assessment in October. Start Strong focuses on reading, not writing, which allows for a quicker turnaround of the scores. They're almost immediate. And the Start Strong quicker student results, and we don't compare this assessment, Start Strong, to any other district's performance or the state of New Jersey. To that end, in the fall, once students have taken the test, we usually get a broadcast from the New Jersey Department of Ed reminding us what we need to do in terms of compliance, which includes sharing those results with families, and then sharing and presenting formally to our Board of Education and the public after we receive those results in district. An important distinction here is that it really is reminding us that they're developed in response to the disruption in education caused by the pandemic, and they're really to be used to inform instruction, not as a comparison or a predictor or indicator of how a student might do on a future assessment. Some of the slides you'll see this evening are what we're required to report out as part of our mandate when we administer a test. So this is one example. We need to report out on how many students participated in these various assessments. Straight counts. And this is broken down for you so you see it by grade level, how many students took that test. I think important just to show is that you see ELA grade 4, 525 students were tested in the ELA, also 525 in math. You'll start to see some differences if you look at the ELA 6. You'll see that ELA for grade 6, you'll see 601 students tested. But when you look at Math 6, you see 604. I want to remind you that some students, specifically our English language learners who are new to our country, are exempt from taking that test. So that would explain why you might see differences in the ELA versus the math numbers. Grade 6 is the first time you see Start Strong administered in science. And those are the totals there. When you see Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, those are total number of students, whether they're sitting in the middle or the high school for those courses. Just a quick reminder of the terminology of how we measure progress. This shows you the language on the far left of the screen, the Start Strong support levels. 3 levels. A student may require strong support in that content, some support, or less support. Think of the less support as someone who's on track with having mastered or understood the standards from the previous year. And just up here is to show you our language we use with the NJSLA that you're familiar with from the spring administration. That's broken into 5 different performance levels. And the state uses something different for the science. There's 4 levels there. I want to acknowledge that I didn't forget to put something in these blank spots here. So I want to orient you to what you see in front of you. This is South Brunswick's fall 2022 results. How are the percentage of students in each of those 3 support bands that I described by grade level? What I had last year when we presented this to all of you was they had already released the state performance. So South Brunswick would have been able at that time to see how we were measuring up at least to the overall state of New Jersey. As of yesterday, those results had not been made public yet. The current memo I had would actually said in due time. So I would expect that they'll be coming at some point. The easiest way to find that is the DOE website tends to update the results when they get those in. But let's just talk a little bit about what we see happening here. So the green on the far right of this chart is the percentage of students that need less support in that grade level on English language arts. And so if we take our 5th grade, which is the second row there, 65% of our 5th graders needed less support in our English language arts content, meaning those 4th grade standards. If we look at grade 8, 17%, which is that column in red, needed strong support in our ELA, the 7th grade standards. Just pause for 1 minute, allow you to process. Board, I know that you had a preview of this, but I'll just give you 1 more second to look. A quick summary would be more than 50% in each of those ELA, we saw that those students needed less support. This next slide, just to give a historical look, I was able to pull for you the fall of 21, which was the first year the test was administered, and the fall of 22, just to kind of show you in comparison. I want to just caution that this is comparing different groups of students. So this is just the 4th grade in October of 21, who are now 5th graders, or the 4th graders in this current year. From these slides, you're able to see that we are seeing some cohorts of students that are needing less support, and we do have some spots where we see students that need strong support. These numbers don't tell the whole story. To really understand and take action, you need to look at the individual student profiles. Those are the reports that parents receive, and to be able to look closer at that is where, you know, the information that you can maybe make change would come from. But just to see the big picture of us as a district is why we prepared these for you. And then finally, the ability to look at a cohort. You might have been curious about the 4th graders in 2021. How did they fare when they participated in a test in 2022? So again, while the content is the same, the standards were still different. But you can see, let's look at grade 5, which is the first row. You can see that when they were in 4th grade, 49% of those students needed less support. But when we look at them in 5th grade, we see that 65% of them need less support. So what we're hoping to see over time is that we see less students needing that strong support. Less students needing strong support compared to needing some support or less support. Another thing we're required to report out on is how our various subgroups performed on this assessment. And so to orient you to this is our English language arts. It is all of our students in each of these subgroup categories. The yellow band across the top shows us our district. Just to put in perspective, that 19% of the students in the district needed strong support, and 61% less support. And the subgroups that are reported out are where the number is more than 20 of any given group you report out publicly. So you'll see our Asian, Black, Hispanic, White, multi-race, Students with disabilities, those are students with IEPs, our English language learners, and our economically disadvantaged. You might ask, in a previous slide, you told us that ELL students might be exempt from taking it. It only is the exemption for the first year they're new to country. So students enrolled in our ELL program would also be taking the test if they've been here longer than a year. This isn't a surprise. This is something that we've seen data like this before. And so we know where our work is or needs to be focused on some of those subgroups. When you see 43% of our Hispanics need strong support, where you see 74% of our English language learners need strong support. This is just showing you the 2-year comparison so that you can see these same subgroups in 2021 and 2022. When you look at the subgroups, not as much change as when you looked at an overall grade level cohort. So this shifts to mathematics, and the slides follow the same template that you saw for English language arts. One thing to note is the grade 8. You might be wondering why the numbers look that way, or why it seems to be 11% are needing less support. 8th grade is where we start our tracking, and some of the students who are in Algebra 1 or geometry are removed from that. And so they're represented in the categories underneath.
So grade 7 also.
Thank you. Some of our 7th graders are also represented in the Algebra 1. And the blanks would be if we had our New Jersey information to compare. This next slide, again, looks at grade level, 2 years in a row, the performance. Fourth grade, we see in the red, the first red column, 23% of the 4th grade cohort that year needed strong support, 16% this year. Some of them are still very close in terms of their scores. This one is that cohort. Fifth grade, the first column would be how they performed as 4th graders. So 23% of our 4th graders needed strong support in math in the fall of 21. 25% need strong support in the fall of 22. And then at the bottom, you'll see if you were enrolled in Algebra 1 in fall of 21, 47% needed strong support, and then 41% of those students in a geometry class needed strong support.
Just want just a little bit about this slide, because it's when you look at math, once you get to middle school level, it's an extremely misleading pile of information. So, for example, if you look at the 8th grade line, you'll see that one year was 31%, then this year went down to 11%. That looks horrible. Right, all of a sudden, our kids are no longer good at math. More than likely, what that means is more kids moved out of 8th grade math. Meaning, when a child gets out of a middle school math, they're going to a higher. So what happens is you're taking your stronger students out of the line And therefore, you're only recording the scores of students that were not pulled out to go higher. So the data for middle school math is traditionally almost impossible to determine. What we need to provide to know better is digging into that, is saying what percentage of our students stayed in 8th grade math versus left, and vice versa. So you can see, then go to Algebra 1 to Geometry, and Geometry to Algebra 2, look what happens. So what that shows you is more of your stronger math students moved and went through the system quicker. And those children wound up in that Algebra 1 versus Geometry. And that's where that pumps up. So if you only looked at one line, that'd be hard to know. But when you look at the lines together, it's telling a story. Good story, bad story, it's just a story. And that's the way to read this. And since we start moving kids up in 7th grade, that's the first year you see a drop. Like in any scenario, when you think of a car race. If you have 20 cars racing in racing 1, or we can even think of, I think it's the way that football is played in Europe. The best team in the sub-league leaves the sub-league and goes to play in the higher league. That's what happens. So if you rate the lower league, they lost their best player. And then their aggregate will be lower. That's just the nature of how math is recorded. So if you understood that, you're smarter than I, but that's pretty much what works in that system.
And this is the subgroup performance. I think it's also important to note that students could be represented in multiple categories here. And this is just that comparison from the previous year, so you have a sense of how the subgroups did in fall of 21 versus fall of 22. In science, our 12th graders who sat for Start Strong in the fall also took the NJSLA science in the spring. 9th grade took 8th grade science test, and 5th grade took a 6th grade in the spring. And here is our science subgroup. And so I think what's important is to share with you all what we then do with the information. And so I said early on that these are just the big picture numbers, the overall trends that we're seeing within the district related to those content areas, related to grade levels, related to the different subgroups. We even have that ability to take a look back. How did they do it? How did this cohort of students do in a prior year? And so there's so many things that happen behind the scenes that I want to share a little bit with you all to know what we're doing. And as part of our requirement, we need to share with everybody what are some of our intervention strategies. And so before I begin going through this list, I would say that review and analysis of assessment results happens at multiple levels. Certainly when the results start to populate, the information and the reports generated are shared with our supervisor team. And when you hear supervisor team, it's not just our English language arts supervisors at each of those levels. It also includes our special education supervisor, our ELL supervisor, are all looking at those different data sets. They're looking for trends. At that level, they're not necessarily looking for an individual student. While they might glance at one particular student, they're really looking at the big picture, those trends of what is this telling us about our program? What is this telling us about our pacing? What is it telling us about the major content in those standards? And are there any adjustments we need to make? Are there any places we need to recalibrate, refocus our lesson planning, our instruction? When it goes to the principal level, the principals and the assistant principals, they look through this data with a different lens. They're looking at it with the lens of who are these students? They know these students. You know, having sat in that principal seat, we would eagerly receive that information and look at the students we had been working with or had identified special program to see if they made any shifts on a standardized metric like this. And then our teachers have access to this information as well. It's probably still underutilized, the Start Strong, because it is still a fairly new assessment. One of the pluses of this assessment is it gives us a little more information than the NJSLA. Because of the quicker turnaround, we're not waiting over the summer months. We're receiving that information rather quickly. In some cases, it's scored within 24 to 48 hours. Now, the aggregate reports aren't available, but you could look at an individual. When you look at an individual student's results, you can actually look at the question that was asked, what the correct question's response should be, and how that individual student answered it. You could actually conference with a student and say, let's talk about this. I noticed that you're not citing your evidence properly. Let's work on that together. And so that's one way it could be used. I know that the elementary interventionists have used this information when they're sitting at a table planning an intervention or a strategy for a student. They're able to use that. In many cases, this isn't necessarily new to us. Our local assessments have already painted that picture of the student in the regular performance. But this is another data point that either confirms or provides maybe another look at how the student's doing. I think one of the most important things as a district that we're tackling this year to help us address big picture disproportionality within our system is our work with Dr. Eddie Fergus. He is out of Rutgers. He is on site with a team of us 8 times, I think it's 8 times this year, and he's working with us specifically on our disproportionality related to course enrollment, gifted and talented program, AP classes, but far more is happening. He's showing us formulas to calculate risk factors for students within our system, how they might need additional support, recognizing that, but then building our literacy around equity and how we might program and plan for all students in South Brunswick. That's where the root of some of those subgroups that had those numbers that make us all take a deep breath, that's where that work is focusing us and directing us towards. We were fortunate through some of the coronavirus grants to receive some additional or fund some additional staff. We have interventionists that support at the middle school. We have coaches supporting our elementary teachers, not only providing targeted supports or interventions for students, but also coaching some of our new teachers with our curriculum. Extended learning opportunities have also been an area of focus at our high school. We were able to do some additional support, not the summer ACAT Institute, but actually like credit recovery type additional reinforcement. That was an opportunity this last summer, and we hope to continue that with the summer of 23. In addition to our elementary and middle also ran programs last summer that we anticipate we will continue and possibly expand. And we have funds available for beyond the day tutoring. When we have students or groups of students at any level, and we've identified them, we can program for those specific individuals. And many times that's considered an action plan where we've identified this student needs additional support with fractions. And so with the help of staff members, we create a goal and we build in opportunities to check progress towards that goal. And our teaching staff signs up to be tutors and provides additional support and intervention to our students. And so that's something that, that's that concept of a village. It can't all be done necessarily for some of our students during the day. And so to have some extra time with them and some more focused time, that's how we've been creative with some of our extended learning opportunities. Programs and supplies, we're constantly looking for what resources we can use in these different environments. For example, something I'm particularly excited about is in our Title I schools, and to remind the board, the elementary Title I schools are Constable, Brunswick Acres, and Greenbrook School. We have expanded use of a program called Foundations in terms of phonics, and the foundations and word work that's happening that had previously happened for small pockets of children in kindergarten and first grade. In those 3 Title I schools, we've expanded it for whole class. And so this is the first year that we had the funds to be able to make that purchase and do that, and it's our hope, because we have seen success in this short amount of time, that we will expand that to the other 4 elementary schools for the next year. And so we're hoping that some of these purposeful decisions, supplies and resources, along with supporting teachers with the implementation, will have a positive impact in the area of literacy, specifically with that example. So what's next? Curriculum. When Dr. Mammon onboarded with us, one of her first tasks was meeting with all of the content supervisors and conducting a curriculum audit. And through that audit, it is our plan to integrate in places of differentiated instruction and focus specifically for some of those subgroup populations. How are we making our curriculum accessible to our ELL learner? How are we making our curriculum accessible to the special needs learners? And so that's a huge focus when you think of all of the curriculum in our district across the grade levels. That's a passion of Dr. Mammon's, and I know that she's working with all of the supervisors on that. The disproportionality action plans, that will come from the work with Dr. Fergus. Our latter sessions will be creating where do we go next? What do we do? What are our steps to get there? And then our charge within our leadership team is holding one another accountable for achieving those action steps and following through with those. And then I mentioned a little bit, we're already in February on our summer planning and beyond. What is our programming going to look like at the elementary, middle, and high school levels for our students here in South Brunswick? So my last slide is our conclusion slide, but I wanted to pause here to see if there were any questions related to what we've shared here with you this evening.
From here out, is the district going to use this every fall? Or is this just periodic in relation to what happened with COVID? And
it's a great question.
Yeah.
I don't have the answer.
Okay.
So what I will say is that the first year of Start Strong was optional for any district that wanted to participate. South Brunswick chose not to participate in that year. Then pandemic, the 2 years it became required. Hard to say whether it's here to stay, but we're required to give it now.
So just the answer is not ours. In other words, it's the state. So the way you worded it was the district.
Yeah.
It's not our decision. So right now, the state directs us to do it or not. So we don't get to choose at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? One clarification. Are all the kids, is it mandatory for all the kids to take these assessments?
It's participation.
Students who are seated in the grade levels that are assessed are required to sit for the assessment. We expect them to participate.
Okay. And the other question, it's not a question, it's just curiosity. When can we expect to hear more about Dr. Fergus's recommendations and work?
So right now, our work with Dr. Fergus, I believe we had 2 sessions, and he has broken it out nicely for us. First part is on our data and understanding that and increasing our literacy there. The next phase, which would be the next maybe 3 or 4 sessions, takes us into our equity muscle and stretching that. And then the planning comes towards the back end of the spring. And so at some point, I would imagine from your ask is, could we get an update and share some of that work? And absolutely, we could put something together to give the board and public update on how exciting this work has been and what our learning is.
Thanks.
Questions? Just have one. The students that are being identified for additional support, I think it's great that we're offering this, the tutoring and the summer schools. That's awesome. Is there a plan on, and maybe Dr. Ferguson will bring this in, but is there a plan on how to engage the families in supporting the child with the plan that the teachers put together, or options for tutoring? Because I'm making a major assumption here, so forgive me, but if there's a summer program and the child, it's difficult to get to that summer program, is that something that he's looking at or you're looking at? How will we engage the family?
Many different ways.
Okay.
The meetings that happen when I talk about tutoring, usually there has been a meeting that includes staff members and parent, and then that plan is put into place.
Okay.
It's very rare that a tutoring initiative would happen without that partnership.
Great.
When we invite students for summer participation, they receive an invitation to join us.
Great.
So again, that goes back and forth between the family.
Okay.
And then finally, in terms of how our families partner with all of that, us in any of these areas, is where you start to see some evidence at parent academies. We recently had the one on mathematics, and we talked about how families can support and partner with us at home and what resources are available. If you think back a couple of years, Lisa, in some of our strategic plans, this whole family community engagement is still an area where we want to grow and expand.
Great. That's good. Any other questions? Yeah, Mr. Hernandez?
For our elementary interventionalist, is that small group instruction? Are they pulling kids out? Is it push-in? And I'm assuming they're working directly with the students and not with the teachers, right?
So our elementary interventionists that we are very fortunate that we have building-based interventionists and we have a district team of interventionists. The building-based are either pulling students out into small groups or they're pushing in to some of the classroom environments, depending on subject need, age of learner, and that varies. The district interventionists are providing what we would put in our response to intervention tiers, a tier 3 level of service, which is more intense with progress monitoring, and they're pulling out those students. That same interventionist at the district level is also owning some coaching where they're meeting with grade level teams of teachers, they're looking at overall data for a class, and they're helping make some decisions about what to do with those students' everyday instruction.
Thank you.
Questions?
It's not a question, it's just a comment. Like at the middle school and in the populations that have the most significant need for more support, I think that working in groups, especially among the Hispanic and the Black population, forcing them to work together on projects that might help them understand math concepts. I mean, maybe we could approach the curriculum ideas, especially at the middle school, that they be responsible for group projects a little bit more to demonstrate collaboration with the hope that will infuse more of the math into them in a more creative way.
So when you talk about just curriculum broadly, and you talk about just your example in the middle school, we want to make that curriculum accessible. So we're constantly thinking about our book choices. We're talking about instructional practices. We're thinking about our connections with our learners and giving them multiple ways to show us that they understand the content. And so all of those things are part of our bigger curricular work happening behind the scenes.
Okay.
Anything else? Wonderful. Thank you so much, Miss Suzanne Luckborn.
So,
That's you. That's me.
so I'm going to be more blunt, because that's me. You're all very kind. Now, I don't know what those scores actually say, because it's an isolated number, meaning I'm not in comparative mode. I don't know if every other district that looks like South Brunswick has the same scores or not. I don't know that. What I do know is that is not impressive. You should not feel, yay, South Brunswick right now. To look at those scores and to see the incredible disparity from one subgroup to the next is unacceptable. So while no one is saying that, I've chosen to say it. So again, you're kind to not say that, but you should be disturbed. Now, I don't know how disturbed you should be, because I don't know the level of comparative scores.
It doesn't matter.
That's correct. It doesn't matter other than because we can compare to ourselves and say we have work to do.
Correct.
So the good news of that is we know we're not trying to hide that we have work to do. And that is important that you understand that and that our community understands that. But that doesn't make that okay. So in working with Dr. Fergus, and we've worked on, with other things as well, the goal has to be to somehow figure out how to get every one of our students to have access and the ability to go further. Now, sounds easy, but obviously it's not, and obviously those numbers represent kind of what the nation represents, but it still isn't okay, and we have to figure this out. So Dr. Fergus is awesome. I hope to have him here at some point so you can meet him and hear how he approaches this work. But I want you to know, and I want our community to know, that while we presented the numbers because we have to, and because the state has elected to not, remember, you heard Suzanne say, there are some things that are scored in 24 hours. So what are we waiting for the state results? And why are we not getting results that break up data in a way that we could use comparative data? Why? Just what is the reason for that? I don't know the answer to that question. It doesn't really matter the answer. We don't have it. We might never get it. And we won't get it at time to use it. But we have this data that says we have an incredibly large disparity. Our ELL kids, now again, maybe all ELL kids can't handle this test. That doesn't, it's not okay, but you know, how long have I been speaking the language? You know, I was talking to our ELL supervisor and I would say, well, if you dropped me in a foreign country where no one spoke my language, nothing was written in my language, my parents didn't speak the language, and then asked me to take a test in that language, I can't believe anybody would be able to pass the test, unless they're really good guessers. But these kids that have taken that test in ELL have been here for longer than that. So let's not use that excuse. Our special needs students, we can say, well, they're special needs because they're behind. Okay, so I need to see what everybody looks like with that, right? Are all districts 75% or higher in needing of more support, whatever that really means, more support? I mean, you know, you look at 3 scores, you still see high, medium, low, right? You can call it whatever you want, but that's the way the mind thinks. So I don't know the answer to those questions. I just know we have to care greatly that the disparity is there. And we do, and we're spending a lot of money on that issue because we need to get under the skin of this and really figure this out. I'm going to give you an example of things we've done as a district. We have Summer Institute. Okay, so who goes to Summer Institute? What do you need to go to Summer Institute? What do you need? Money.
And transportation.
What if you don't have those things? Do you go to Summer Institute? No. Why do we do that? Why are we almost by design leaving out some of the populations that probably fall on that list? Not necessarily those populations, but we're leaving out one population that's economically disadvantaged. You're leaving them out from being have access. So are we providing a bus? Are we offering scholarships? What are we doing? Well, if we offer scholarships, then we're taking away from a seat, a paying seat, we're not going to make as much money, blah, blah, blah. We can go through this all day. What we're doing with Dr. Fergus, we need to look at our practices. What do we do to cause some of that? On purpose? No. Are we trying to be bad? No. But can we be more deliberate in actions that change the outcomes? I think the answer is yes. Now it's just a matter of figuring out what those actions are, how to deliver them, how to fund them, and how to prioritize them. So that's my blunt piece.
Any
Thank you,
comments
guys.
on that? I think that, thank you for that. And I think it's important also to recognize that, yeah, we're being nice and we don't want to come off inappropriately. And I appreciate you doing that because I think we all pretty much felt the same way when we saw the results. And we look forward to seeing the changes because there are so many kids out there that are unfortunately in a situation where they can't get to the place via either money or transportation, and I'm glad to see that we're going to do that. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Dr. Raj.
Just a comment. How do you, as an educator, how do you rate the quality of the test itself? It's a standardized assessment, not necessarily designed to capture the variance. So how would you, as an educator, what do you think of the test in itself, the quality of the test?
Can we talk more about the disparity again? The quality of the test? I don't know. It's a retest of a test they just took. It's right after the summer. It's taken in September. It was taken in September this year, I think, wasn't it? It's taken in September. That has an impact, but my point would be it has an impact on everybody the same.
Yeah.
So regardless of the quality of the test, my issue with it is our results. Now, I guess if we got under the skin of the test, which we probably will never totally do that, we'll find issues with the test, right? We'll find all kinds of issues. We might find, I don't even know what we'll find, but I'm sure we'll find issues. But the issues are the same for everybody unless there's something about that test that is culturally norming in some way, in which case then that's a problem. But I don't know that to be true. I'm not going to make that statement. So as far as the quality of the test, I don't think the test is needed. I don't think it's the right thing we should be doing in September when kids come in. So that's probably the best I got. I don't know if anyone else wants to answer that from the table, but.
Okay. All right, we look forward to the next set of results. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Whoops, sorry. Okay, the next order of business is to hear the reports of the committees and the liaison point of contacts. Will the Education Committee report?
The Education Committee met on 31st January 2023. It was an ad hoc meeting to discuss about preschool. So Mr. Feder covered pretty much everything that we discussed during the meeting, and the minutes will be up on the portal soon.
Very good, thank you. Business operations, any update? Nope. Policy Committee is not here. They will be meeting next week, I believe. Finance Committee.
Finance Committee met on this past Tuesday, and we went over information that was given to us by Mr. Pawlowski. I'll have a report for you at the next board meeting.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our negotiations, just a quick update. Mr. Mitchell, Dr. Raj, Mr. Krishna and myself, along with members of the administration, met with the administrator and supervisors, and they've come to an agreement, and once the contract is ratified, just the administrators. Once the contract is ratified, we will have an update for you. We still have 3 remaining unions to negotiate with, and we'll have an update on that soon. Okay. The next item on the agenda is public comments. Oh, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Liaisons. You're right.
I have a couple of reports. Cambridge Elementary recently hosted their winter concert, and our Litlist musicians were awesome. Kudos to Cambridge School for supporting our budding musicians. And Crossroads PTO met on 26 Jan. They hosted a very important and very informative presentation on vaping. So that is something apparently in fashion these days. Young kids are taking to vaping, which is just like downgraded smoking, or maybe something like smoking. So something every parent should actually be familiar with. So the presentation slides are up on the Crossroads PTO Facebook page. So if anybody is interested, they can just go and access it. And Crossroads South will also be presenting Disney's Newsy, the musical, on Friday, February 10th at 7 p.m. and Saturday, February 11th at 1 p.m. Tickets can be purchased at the door, and hope to see you all there.
Thank you. Does anybody, other liaison reports? Thank you for that. No? Great. Thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda is public comments. The Board of Education recognized the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on social matters of community interest. Complete copies of the rules that govern this portion of the meeting are available to the public at the back of the room, or you may obtain an advanced copy by contacting the board office during regular business hours. We reserve the right to limit each speaker to no more than 3 minutes. Mr. Pawlowski will indicate when you have 15 seconds remaining. It is our plan to listen to each member of the public. We will note all questions and comments made. Once all questions and comments from all members of the public are made, the Board of Education will respond, if necessary, to questions or comments in the most timely and efficient manner available. Please consider not repeating questions or comments made by other members of the public. When recognized, please approach the podium and state your name, place of residence, and/or your group affiliation. The first public comment is for agenda items only. There will be a second opportunity for the public to comment on any matter. Mr. Pawlowski, do we have any members of the public who pre-registered?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Are there any audience members who wish to make a public comment? Seeing none, we will close this portion of the public comments. Next order of business is old business. Seeing none, we shall move on to new business. Seeing none, we will also now move on to the consent agenda review by Mr. Pawlowski. Mr. Pawlowski?
Pretty quick agenda this evening. We have a bills list, and we have item number 1.2 is a transportation bid. We're also approving 4 routes for Road to Success. We have disposal of some property. We have a purchase over the bid limit for a repair at Brooks Crossing for a wall flashing, which is leaking water into the main office. We are approving a vendor for a demographic study. We have the authorization to use the RFP process to go out for vending machine services across the district. We're approving an agreement for a DOT testing services and the Summer Institute course booklet. We're accepting a donation for $2,500 to the South Brunswick High School Athletic Department. We have Chapter 193, should be 192 and 193. Please note that item 110 is a 192 and 193. Those are pass-through monies from the Department of Education for non-public schools in the area. We're approving our student field trips. We have our harassment, intimidation, bullying report. We also have our professional development and travel-related expenses for reimbursement. That's your agenda.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Pawlowski? Yes, Mr. Krishna.
David, just a clarification. You know, where in the almost last where you're granting permission for all the reimbursements, there are two lines that don't have numbers. I was just wondering, is that a typo or?
Which item are you looking at?
Judy Mahoney and Jennifer Brennan. 1.1.
Are we talking the professional development workshops?
Okay, so
The PD is free.
So it's no charge, no charge, other than there wouldn't be here to go for the
okay,
professional development.
got it.
Okay. I'm glad you had your answer come from somewhere. I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. Okay. Any other questions?
Good? Okay, very good.
All right.
So we need a motion and a second for the consent agenda.
So moved.
Mr. Nathanson?
Second.
Dr. Raj? I'm going to get Julie next time. May I have a roll call, Mr. Pawlowski?
Mrs. Julie Ferrara?
Approve?
Mrs. Laura Hernandez? Mrs. Deepa Karthik? Absent. Ms. Alicia Khan?
Yes.
Mr. Raja Krishna?
Yes.
Mr. Mike Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Barry Nathanson?
Yes.
Dr. Smith the Raj?
Yes.
Mrs. Lisa Rogers?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Pawlowski. Next is a second opportunity for the public to comment on any matter. Again, reminded that we recognize the value of the comments and that you're limited to 3 minutes. Mr. Pawlowski, do we have any members of the public who are pre-registered?
No, we do not.
And are there any audience members who wish to make a public comment? Seeing none, we shall move on. If there's no further comments by the board, we will close this public portion of the public, excuse me, let me try that again. As there's no comments from the public, we will close this public portion. If there's also no further business to be discussed, we will move on. I just have 2 points that I'd like to make. Please make sure that you complete the disclosure email sent by Ms. Garetano on February 2nd. That needs to be completed. And note that the next scheduled Board of Education meeting is set for Thursday, February 23rd, 2003. And we will be moving into executive session. Be it resolved that the Board of Education and the Township of South Brunswick hereby moves into an executive session in accordance with the Sunshine Law, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, NJSA 1046 through 10421, to discuss the following: legal matters and student matters. Be it further resolved that the discussion conducted in executive session can be disclosed to the public at such time as the matters have been resolved. Formal action may be taken at any meeting. May I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
So moved.
Time. You're having a first and a second to move into executive.
My apologies. May I have a motion and a second to move into executive session?
So moved.
Mitchell.
Mr. Mitchell and Ms. Hernandez, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Any news? Okay. And now we will move to adjournment. May I have a motion and a second? No, we have to do it in there. Sorry. I forgot. Okay, so we will now be moving into an executive session. So thank you for attending, and South Brunswick, have a pleasant evening.